uh, feel free to ask them. I see there is a question from Isaac. Hello, Isaac. So Isaac says, hi Megdi, I read from Ramesh Balsekar the following. There is suffering, but not a sufferer. Could you comment, please? There's never been a sufferer, Isaac. Because there is no separate entity. There is no reality to a separate consciousness. So for there to be a sufferer, there has to be a specific separate consciousness that is sort of separate from the whole, that is suffering. So it's true, you know, in that. Oops, there is an echo here. Let's see what we can do. One moment. Let me see, there is this echo here. Let's see what we can do. Did everybody hear the echo that I just heard? No. Okay. So it's just an echo that I'm somehow picking up here. Okay. Well, that's good. At least it's not interfering with your with you. So coming back to the question, yes, there is no sufferer, but there is an impression of suffering. The impression of suffering is what we refer to as the impression of separation, the impression of being a separate consciousness, an object that is in time and space, meaning a mortal object, a decaying object, an object that is subject to conditions. So that impression, which the identification is that impression that I'm talking about, being identified, having identified oneself as a mortal body mind, as a man, a woman, as an object in time and space, as an event in time and space, as an experience in time and space. Once that identity is in place, there is the impression of suffering. There is first the impression of limitation, that I'm a limited being, and being a limited being, there is a contraction in the space at the feeling level, and that is what is referred to as the impression of suffering. That contraction, Isaac, is unbearable. You know, consciousness loves the openness, loves the freedom, the joy, the peace, the transparency, the honesty, the openness. So whenever there is that identification, then consciousness is seeking to free itself from that identification. It's seeking to liberate itself from that impression. It's like you're having a bad dream, and somehow, you know, in your dream, you're unhappy. It's a nightmarish type of dream, and you, at some level, you're aware to a certain degree. It varies, of your unhappiness. At one end of the spectrum, you're totally numb to your unhappiness, and so that's like deep ignorance. You're sort of living the unhappy dream, hoping and wishing that well, actually there isn't any awareness that you are living an unhappy dream. That's at an extreme. Of course, there is a whole spectrum of being aware of your unhappiness. And as you become aware of your unhappiness, there is a calling to free yourself from this unhappiness. There is a seeking for happiness. And the seeking for happiness is a blessing, especially when this seeking for happiness goes straight to the truth. In other words, when your seeking becomes an inquiry, an inquiry into the nature of unhappiness, rather than a pursuit of an addiction, rather than an addiction and a pursuit of an object, a pursuit of an experience, a pursuit of a relationship, a pursuit of a certain form. So whenever your quest for happiness takes on the form of contemplation and inquiry, that is the direction towards the uncovering of the darkness, of the ignorance, and so it's a blessing when you become aware of your unhappiness, and when you start inquiring, contemplating the nature of your unhappiness. What is it that's unhappy? What is this unhappiness about? How does it manifest? And so you find yourself in satsang, in this sort of dialogue. Now, where I would disagree with in the there is suffering but not a sufferer, it's not really disagreement, it's just a sort of a clarification that if there is suffering, or when there is suffering, that's the sufferer. The sufferer is the suffering. There isn't a separate entity that is suffering. What we refer to as the sufferer is suffering itself, meaning suffering refers to a me. Because when in the absence of a me, there is no suffering. You see, when there is complete openness, when there are no borders to you, no limitations onto you, just the peace and the happiness, suffering is completely absent. So suffering and the me go hand in hand, you see. So whenever there is suffering, there is an impression of a me. There is a me impression. So there is a sufferer impression. You see, in fact, there is no separate entity, because consciousness is completely borderless and wholesome and open. Consciousness is not contained, in fact. But until that is revealed to you in its fullness, the impression of suffering, the impression of being a me, of being a sufferer that is suffering, will continue to visit you. It will visit you in your waking state, or it will visit you in your sleeps, in your night dreams, or both. Usually both, in both cases. So I would rather say that consciousness, which is the reality of our experience, does not suffer. And it does not suffer because it has no limitations to it. It is a borderless presence. It's not subject to phenomenal conditions. It's not an event. So consciousness is the awareness that is aware of events, takes on the form of dreams and objects and thoughts and sensations, but itself, it remains open, like a mirror reflects various images, but it remains a mirror. So consciousness does not suffer. Suffering is this impression that I am a limited consciousness. So it's important for you to inquire, Isaac, into what proof is there that consciousness, meaning whatever it is that's truly here right now, perceiving these perceptions, this hearing this voice, perceiving this perception, that truly is perceiving this perception. How is that limited? What are the limitations of that? That's the inquiry you need to do. And also, you need to contemplate that this inquiry is not just intellectual inquiry. You're actually inquiring into yourself, because it is you that is conscious. It is you that is hearing these words. So the inquiry into consciousness is the inquiry into yourself. Inquiry into the reality of this moment, the reality of this experience, is an inquiry into yourself. So you're going directly to yourself and you're asking yourself, and there is no better person to ask than yourself. There is no better place to go than directly to yourself. Ask yourself, am I not right now this aware presence? This bodily sensation, whatever bodily sensation is arising right now, it arises in this borderless presence. Whatever thought may arise right now arises in this open, borderless space. So as you contemplate the reality of your experience, you will come upon this borderless open space that I am, that you are. And that is beyond suffering. Suffering might be an impression that may arise for you whenever you forget that you are this open, aware presence, and you identify with an Isaac character, and then once there is that identification, then there are many thoughts. I mean, why did they do this to me? Why did I do that? I shouldn't have done this. God, I thought I was smarter than that. Oh, gee, why am I not, having the life that I should have? And why are they happier than, the whole. So coming back to your question, the sufferer and the suffering are one. There is no suffering without a sufferer, without an impression of a sufferer. But if you look for the sufferer, you will find that there is no separate sufferer. There is no such thing as a me that is contained in there is no such a thing as a personal entity, as a personal Isaac. So the person is a bundle of thoughts, memories, beliefs, bodily sensations that have been labeled as me. Might be bodily sensation in the belly. That's sort of, I feel I'm me in my belly or in my chest. I feel I'm me. It's a sensation that's identified as a me. Many times when you ask people, where are you or what are you, they point to their body, they point to their chest. Or usually they point to their chest. They're actually pointing to the heart, but it hasn't yet reached that maturity where you realize that you're actually pointing to the universal heart, of the heart of presence. But sometimes some people say, okay, there is no sufferer. I've realized there is no sufferer, there is no me, but I'm still suffering. Now that's I think it's a neo-Advaita belief that, oh well, I've understood now, there is no sufferer, there is no me, it's all an illusion, but there's still suffering. Suffering is part of it. Now that is a neo-Advaita. There cannot be suffering if the impression of a sufferer is totally dissolved. The me impression is totally seen through and is totally dissolved. There is no sufferer. There is no suffering. Whenever there is suffering, there is a me impression that's visiting the space again. Sort of a roller coaster. Eventually, as you're contemplating more and more the reality of your experience, the stability of the realization of the self will abide, and you will find yourself less and less in the personal identification. But whenever there is suffering, if you turn your attention inwardly, you will find that at that moment you have adopted the belief that you are a man, a person in time and space, and therefore a sufferer. Does that clarify your question, Isaac? Okay.
Thank you, Mahdi.
Oh yeah. Ananda wrote a question. Hello, Ananda. Ananda says, the me impression is like a well-played Shakespeare character, which seems to have autonomous reality. Should we expect this impression to become weak or transparent? Or can it remain dynamic and even intensely played while spacious presence smiles on? It sounds like, can I have happiness and unhappiness simultaneously? I do not feel I am suffering. I'm going back to reading some more. I do not feel I am suffering, more like I am playing a very intricate role here. Am I not even playing this role? Well, you see, Ananda, once you become very clear about the role that consciousness is playing, meaning that consciousness is appearing as a mind, is appearing as a certain localized mind, but that it is that same consciousness that is appearing as all minds, then the identification ceases, because you are all minds. You are not just this one mind. You as consciousness are all minds perceiving all perceptions, experiencing all experiences, creating all creations. So the local identification ceases, but the local experience does not. So there is still a local experience. There is the mechanism, the mind is limited through the senses to a certain certain parameters, and so in spite of this local mind experience, the identification is not occurring, because the understanding that what I am is transparent presence is settled, has landed. The eagle has landed. It's settled. So your experience is that of consciousness rather than that of a person. So it's like you do not forget your true nature. It's no longer a peak in your true nature. It is an uninterrupted knowingness of yourself. So the way you play the game, if you want to use that term, is it's actually, when I say you play the game, it's consciousness. You as consciousness play the game. You play the celebratory game, the happy game, the game of freedom and celebration, joyful relationships, loving relationships, understanding, patience, certain situations. You do your best. You are not attached to the outcomes. You find yourself sort of in a place of freedom. This does not imply carelessness or lack of responsibility. Not at all. Your sense of responsibility is very tailored to the situation. Every situation requires a certain way of approaching it that takes in account the whole, not just the old patterns of me. How can this serve me? And it is an effortless process. It's just it's our true nature. So true nature takes over.
Yeah, and that sounds right. Well, you wouldn't be King Lear, probably, even if a character, you could call it a character, okay? I can see that it could be a happier character, a happier expression, like a happier dream. But the thing that's so peculiar is just the connection, the especially established connection with consciousness with this, perspective.
Yes.
When it in fact is all dream characters.
Yes. So there is at the mind level a local impression, meaning right now I am looking at the screen from this angle, and you're looking, in this perception, and you're looking at a different perception. So it's like, for example, right now your right hand is resting maybe on your left thigh, or on your right thigh, and your left hand on your left thigh. So there is a different impression at the left hand location that differs from the right hand or the right foot location, but yet the right hand, the left hand, the feet, they're all one. They're one organism, one body. You say, just using a metaphor here, but so although there is a local impression at the mind level, there isn't an identification. So you perceive this perception. Actually, if you look at your own perceptions, they change all the time. Like, for example, if you look to your right now, it would be a different perception than looking straight at the screen. So you could say, oh, gee, well, at the mind level, at the local mind level, the perception has changed. But that is not an issue, right? It's no problem.
Without identification, it's not an issue, but that saying without identification, that's the crux of it all.
Right, right.
As you say, I don't know, thoroughly or to the bottom or whatever.
Yes.
That's cleared.
Absolutely, absolutely. So an identification basically refers to a personal consciousness, meaning that consciousness is bound to this body, mind. So when you inquire into consciousness and you ask yourself, is my experience of consciousness that my experience is consciousness contained into this body? You have to ask yourself that question.
Right.
Is it my experience that consciousness is contained in my head, in my shoulders, in my heart? Is that my experience? I'm not saying is it my belief here. There could be that belief, but we're not looking at the belief. We're looking at the experience.
No, the experience is more. The experience is that it's appearing. A body, mind,
yes,
hand are appearing.
Right? They appear. So consciousness is more as an open space, and there are phenomenal events that appear in this open space, but they don't limit that space. In other words, if you're looking at an ant, or if you're looking at an elephant, consciousness doesn't become smaller when it's looking at an ant, and then it becomes larger when you're looking at an elephant.
Right.
The object, right? It doesn't get older with time. It's like consciousness was not younger 10 minutes ago, and now it's 10 minutes older. That's not our experience.
True.
That's not our experience. Our experience is not a phenomenal experience. We experience phenomena, but the experience of ourselves, meaning the experience of consciousness, that is not phenomenal. You have to look at your own experience and ask yourself that question. Am I experiencing consciousness as a phenomenal experience? Am I perceiving it? Am I touching it? Am I seeing it expanding? Am I seeing it getting older? Am I seeing it getting thinner? You will find that that is not the case. So identification that consciousness depends on a body, meaning it changes with the body, is a belief. It's an archaic belief, because consciousness does not change with the body. It's changeless. You see, it doesn't have a changing quality. Change is memory.
So maybe these issues that I'm bringing up at the moment, they sound more like they're incidental.
Yes.
They're interesting and incidental, and it's the belief, it's the old archaic belief that makes me say, well, let's clear this up. Why is there a localized experience in this space.
Why not?
And like, who cares?
Yeah, right. I mean,
if it's not.
A localized experience, in a way, if I mean at the mind level now, if you knew everything and you were experiencing everything and you remembered everything simultaneously, what sort of fun would that be? I mean, you wouldn't even be talking to me because you would know, you would know exactly what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, what I'm wearing, what I had for lunch. What fun would that be?
Mm.
Like it's as if in your dream there is only one character. Imagine that in your dream there is just one character, Billy, and that's it. That's your dream. Your dream is just Billy. Because you know everything about. I mean, there are no other characters. There are no relationships, no adventures, no. There's nothing. There is no. It's, if you know everything simultaneously and you remember everything simultaneously, it's not so much fun.
Or
when you go to the movies, you get surprised by the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of. You don't know what the next person is going to say.
So what you're describing is similar to like a samadhi state, it seems to me. And if we had the choice to just be in a unified field of light or something, but why would that be preferable? And that's just it's not preferable. It's not
I'm not talking about the state. But I'm saying that the reality of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about the reality of your experience. The reality of your experience is presence, is borderless presence. Is the reality of your experiences of your experience is not what is changing, because what is changing is it could be your dream. You could right now be dreaming this conversation, right?
Yes.
Which is fine. It's nice. It's a nice conversation to dream, and it's fun. There is nothing against dreaming this conversation, but the reality of your experience right now is not the conversation. It is the awareness, the space, the openness, the understanding, the knowingness of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a primacy, the primacy of consciousness in your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness is your primary experience, and that primacy is what what perceives all perceptions, takes on all forms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's not a question of what to choose. You could choose to identify yourself with an ant if you want. Who would care? It's your freedom. You could dream that you're an ant. It's your freedom. But irrespective of what you choose to dream, it is happier, let's say, to dream a knowing dream than to dream an unknowing dream. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you are dreaming that you are an ant and you don't know that you are consciousness, you better be careful, because you get stomped on. You could be eaten by a scorpion. You could be attacked by bees. God knows what's going to. So you're going to be living in fear, which is your freedom as well. You're right. You're right in your question. Your question is, why should I prefer A over B? You don't have to. You're only here. We are in this conversation because this conversation interests you. But this conversation may not interest you, and you may be very happy as as Ananda, as Michael, as Jimmy, as Bill, as whatever, or as an ant. You identify with whatever you want. That's your complete freedom. which
Mm.
is a freedom of consciousness.
Mm.
But you are in this conversation because you have an interest
Mm.
in an understanding.
Yeah.
You have an interest in understanding what is the reality of my experience. This is why we are in this conversation. So yes,
Yes.
there is no obligation to
Mm.
choose consciousness over being a man, a mortal man, or being a great hero, if you want to imagine yourself to be a great hero, or the smartest man on the planet, whatever. There is no obligation.
Mm. Mm.
Is one is only better than the other if you feel it this way, if you experience it this way.
Mm. No, I find a lot of things are falling off of interest in. Maybe it has to do with age and process in life or something, but
No, it doesn't have to do with age, because
people could continue, yeah.
absolutely, it has to do with getting the message, hearing a message, and becoming interested by what you heard, or what was revealed to you, and now digging deeper, going deeper into that interest, into that calling. And as you go deeper, as you inquire, you continue in your inquiry, a lot of the frou-frou stuff starts to fall off. A lot of the dressings and all the charades that you were, in a way, that you were adorning and believing yourself to be, start to fall away. And there is a more of a simplicity, more of a the peace and tranquility. So yes, there is that, and there might be some nostalgia to some of the the old peaks of
Yes.
drinking yourself to oblivion.
Oh my gosh! One of the things that I noticed that I still have, that's an archaic form for me, maybe, is I have a flirtatious nature, where instead of a completely clear with women, instead of a completely clear whatever, there's this element that seems like a looping in to belief. I'm just
well,
no.
don't consider women to be women. Drop that woman. Drop the whole woman. The woman thing, and just to relate as consciousness. And the biology will take care of itself, which is very beautiful. There is a naturalness to the biology, and it's very beautiful, very beautiful. And it's celebratory, it's sweet, that takes care of itself. But when you're relating, with a woman as a man, and you're perceiving the woman as a woman, there are a lot of social biases. There is a lot of noise. There is a lot of noise in the space, and a lot of inherited from young age.
Oh yeah, my father's hang-ups are all there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, father, teachers, etc. Right. So, so
I see.
just relate as consciousness, as presence, so not as a woman or a man.
Not with the pretense, or almost, or fantasy that something might something may happen with us.
No, let it go. Let that go.
Yeah.
Let that go. Don't be a hunter, because that's the hunter and the hunted, that's only goes so far, you see. It's like a prey and a predator. It only goes so far. It's not the real happiness. It's not the real meeting. A meeting is at a deeper level. It's at the level of presence, at the level of the listening space. It's at the level of your absence, not of your presence. So rather than moving forward, just open up and not move back, but open up. Don't harbor any notions, and definitely the whole time thing, but like getting somewhere in time is unhappy. So and it's sensed, your partner, the other party, the other person that you're relating with can sense your unhappiness, and that does not draw the other to open to want to celebrate, you say. So the celebration starts with yourself. You say you abide as presence, as consciousness, and you relate with everybody as consciousness. Okay.
Thanks. Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you, Nanda. Thank you, Nanda. Katya, hello, Katya. Katya asks, is it necessary to clear one's vasanas before the truth can be revealed? Yes, Katya, let me just speak a little bit about vasanas. So, although you may have some clarity, which is very important, that I am not a mortal body mind, that I am not a man, a woman, that I'm not an object or an event in time and space, although you might have a glimpse of that, a very clear glimpse of that, and that you have clarity that I am consciousness, although you may have a glimpse of that, there are, at the feeling level, at the somatic level, there still are me tendencies. And in time, after your enlightenment experience, meaning after your realization that I am presence, that I am consciousness, these tendencies at the feeling level will arise. They're still there, and they will interfere with your happiness. So let's say the objective of consciousness is the complete revelation of itself, the complete realization of itself, meaning to come onto complete happiness, onto total happiness, total peace and happiness that does not waver, that does not come and go. So, of course, there is a process to that. It takes time. There are various situations that will arise in your life that will trigger those vasanas, meaning they will trigger those me tendencies. And so as these tendencies get triggered, it is important to recollect your understanding. Your understanding is that I am not a woman. I am not Katya. I am consciousness. Meaning, I am not this limited body-mind. I am universal consciousness. This consciousness is not trying to protect itself. It's always the person that is trying to protect itself, that is trying to advance itself, that is trying to better itself. Consciousness is not doing that. It's not trying to improve itself. The whole improvement business is at the personal level, at the me level, at the identification level. So whenever these me tendencies get triggered, they get triggered in life situations as reactions. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, or somebody at work doesn't like you, or is competing with you, or says some bad things about you, or insults you. And the me tendency gets triggered at the feeling level. It's really important that you recollect your understanding that whenever I am reacting as a person. Whenever I am feeling hurt, I have identified as a person. Whenever I am defending myself or aggressing somebody or thinking ill will about somebody, at that moment I am identified as a person. And whenever you identify as a person, you are going to perceive another, and there is going to be a conflict between me and the other. And the me tendency is maintained in that conflict. But when you recollect your understanding that I am not this me, that I am this aware presence, you relax. You go to your stillness. You go to your silence, to your inner silence. And in this inner silence, all is well. It is not a refuge. Inner silence, inner peace is our true nature, is consciousness. Consciousness is the, let's say, the eye of the storm. It's the stillness at the eye of the storm. So you go to the stillness, to the presence, not to the me. Why did they do that to me? They should not have spoken to me this way. I treated them so well. Why are they treating me bad? They don't deserve my friendship. All of that is not the stillness. It is the mind, the gears grinding. So at the mind level, you go to your stillness. At the body level, Katya, you go to your infinite presence, to your borderlessness. The body is a transparent space. In this transparent space, sensations dissolve in the space. They dissolve in the transparent space of presence, which is your true being, which is your true self, your true body. And as you do that, Katya, you are not reinforcing those vasanas. You're allowing them to release in presence. And in time, they will release in presence. First, maybe the major one, the big structures, the big vasanas, the big identifications will release. They might release quickly and in mass, or they might release softly and gently in a way that you won't even notice. And then in time, the more subtle tendencies, the more subtle vasanas will also release. You might not notice it as it's releasing. You might notice it after the fact, when you will find yourself undisturbed by events that in the past used to disturb you. You will realize the change that has occurred. You might realize it after the fact. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. Vasanas need to clear, uh, and that's the process of the stabilization of the truth. But this does not mean that there isn't already the experience of peace and happiness that's occurring even as vasanas are releasing. There might be some back and forth, but it's moving towards a more and more stable peace. Of course, it's important to go all the way with it. At some point in time, you really have no choice about it because your love for truth will trump everything else. I hope this answers your question, Katya.
Maybe
Yes, Gonzalo.
as consciousness being the only reality, every perception appearing in consciousness is perceived as part of consciousness. So how could it be like possible even to think about a personal consciousness? Because that will be like like saying this is the totality, and saying that there is something more beyond the totality.
Right.
So like when there is a reference to a limited personal consciousness, it's more like talking about it's more it's a thought. It's just like a finite thought or part of the mental you know mentation, right? Which says, "Oh, I know," but yeah, I know as a me. What me? Well, just a thought that there is something like a me here, which is false, right? So if there is never been any separation in
Right.
consciousness, even the thought I as a separate entity is consciousness as the perceiver and the perceived. Even the thought I as something separate is part of the consciousness and is perceived and appearing in consciousness, right?
Right. Yeah, there is no separate consciousness.
So, more like when, for example, is asked to investigate about the possibility that there is a personal consciousness or that there is a universal consciousness. Very fast is seeing very clearly that what we think about a personal consciousness is more like a thought. This is more like a me thought, I thought, right? Just like a separation made by
Yeah.
thought.
You know, Gonzalo, yes, although there is no separate consciousness, there are various levels of understanding of that, various levels of stabilization in the clarity about that. In a way, we talk about what we talk about here in the meetings meaning the reality of consciousness and the universality and the wholeness of consciousness, only as a reminder. For some it's a reminder, for others it might be something that they still deeply contemplating, and for some others it might be very obvious and even the reminder is not necessary. But yes, although it can be stated very simply that there is one reality, and that is the reality of consciousness, and that this consciousness is universal and not personal. There are various levels of understanding of that. And so we come together as friends at different levels. We are at different levels together, having one conversation, but in this one conversation there are many conversations that relate to each one of us at a different level. Definitely, the ultimate understanding of what you just said is the complete end of the impression of separation. In other words, the understanding is so complete that yes, indeed, there is no separation. Yes, indeed, I am the self at the experiential level, not just at the understanding level, at the beingness level, and then to the point where your experience is that of the self. That experience is unique, and it goes beyond the mind. It is not a mind experience.
And it's also part of, I mean, it's kind of all the all the time is the background of everything that happens in daily life. It's no
Yes.
Separation, right?
Yes, it is the background, and it is the entire field. Initially it is non-existent. It is the world that is real, and then it is, consciousness is real, and it's the background of the world, body, mind. And then at some point it is clear that it's the reality of everything. It's not just the background, it's the entire field.
It's kind of the integration of what is perceived and the perceiver. Like there is a perception of whatever is arising. It is the knowingness that this is part of me as consciousness, but still there is kind of a split there, a gap of a perceiver that is not anymore the me, or the separate me perceiving, because it's just what perceives, what is beyond. I mean, what is the only perceiver, but there is still like a kind of gap in what is perceiving and what is perceived. So
the best way to describe it is as peace and happiness. The experience of the self is the experience of peace and happiness. freedom, peace, and happiness. That does not depend on anything. And it is not causeless. It is not causality. It's not depending. It is causeless. It is not depending on any condition. It has no beginning. It does not. Your happiness does not begin with the sunrise and ends with the sunset, or does not begin with a relationship and end with the end of the relationship. It is completely causeless. So the experience of the self is the experience of bliss, of ananda, Satchit Ananda. Presence.
You refer there to total establishment in peace.
Yes.
Where all the vasanas are just.
Yes. 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 That bypasses all understanding. It is the fruition of the exploration. It's the fruition of the contemplation.
Meanwhile, is what you call coming and going. You know, some moments of real peace and happiness, and some moments where still the me impression in the body is in charge, and then again it will come some moments of peace and happiness.
It moves towards the goal. Like when you're traveling towards California and you're in New York, you're 3,000 miles away. But after 2 days of traveling, you're 1,500 miles away. And after 2 more days of traveling, you're 200 miles away, and you can start smelling the ocean. It moves in one direction, you know, Gonzalo. It moves towards the ocean. And it's a journey of love, because it's an interest in truth, and truth is love and beauty. So it's a journey of love, of passion, and of you know, deep sincerity, deep honesty, and there's a lot of beauty in that. There's beauty in sincerity, in devotion, in honesty, and in contemplating truth. It's a high contemplation. It's better than contemplating being the president of the world. It's a contemplation that goes beyond the phenomenal realm. It goes to the eternal. It goes to the divine. So it's a journey of love. You know, it's not a journey of frustration and despair. It's a celebratory journey, and it brings friends together. You know, friends meaning truth lovers, people that celebrate truth and love truth. It brings them together. And this is a very beautiful gathering, the gathering of the Sangha. You know, the community of truth lovers.
Magdi?
Yes, Ananda.
I'm just wondering about something you mentioned to me a couple times in our conversation, relating as consciousness, rather than as a man or a person. And that's an interesting area, because relating involves so much relativity. Parent, self, and other, incredibly rich motivations and interests and stuff like that. Um, so how is it to be clearly consciousness relating rather than consciousness through all these filters?
Right. So, so consciousness is not trying to improve itself, to defend itself, to aggrandize itself, to have a better life, to have a better experience, to have a better house, a better girlfriend, a better. It comes from wholeness, fullness, completeness, peace, joy, openness, and globality. It recognizes everything as itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the situations vary, Ananda. It depends. There are various ways in which consciousness expresses itself in truth.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it might be a very appropriate response for consciousness to say no to somebody. Let's say, for example, somebody comes and tells you, "Hey, we could." We have to pay $10 charge, but we can sneak from the back door and get in without paying the $10 charge. It's no problem. At that point, at that moment, what's appropriate for consciousness because consciousness understands, has a global view that there is an overhead to this business, that they're spending a lot of money to build it and so on, and they collect $10 charge for their business, and it's not your business to come and double what do you say double well, I forgot the expression, to cut into that their ways of proceeding. So you say no to that, or somebody bullying you, you say no to that, because although consciousness does not care about being bullied, it does not nourish, it does not maintain bullishness. It says no, that's not a relationship that I want to have, but it's okay, you can go have it with somebody else, who knows, I mean, you can go, but here that's not what I'm open to, because consciousness is also beauty, love, and happiness, and celebratory, and loves the beauty, and does not love the conflicts and aggression. And of course, conflicts may arise, and at the moment of conflicts, then how to deal with that situation as consciousness. So at that moment, every moment has its own particular design that you as consciousness can look at, and for example, in times of conflict, you can try to come with understanding. So you broaden your understanding, because usually in conflict there is point of view A versus point of view B. There is rarely a point of view that attempts to sort of really listen, and to try to take an approach that might benefit everybody, takes everybody's claims and situations in consideration. So the answer to your question, there isn't a one shoe fits all or way of relating as consciousness. It varies from situation to situation, and you cannot. It's not about like being a nice person across the. No, it's not like adopting like a molasses. No, it's adopting clarity. A position of openness, of clarity, of fairness, of listening, of understanding. So and you do your best. Sometimes even when you're listening, you're in a listening space, there isn't enough information that comes to you to really shed enough light on the situation. And so if you have that situation and you can wait, then you'll wait. You say, okay, well, I'm gathering more information. But if you must choose, sometimes you have to make a choice, then you do your best. You choose, you pick a choice because obviously you don't have the time to get all the information. You pick a choice and you go with it, but you don't regret, because consciousness doesn't do regret. At that moment, this was the data that was available to you. Maybe 10 minutes later, you get a piece of information that would have made you, instead of choosing the choice that you made an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, a choice totally opposite. But at that moment, you did not have that information, and you needed to make the choice. Voila, it's like that. You let it go. You say, okay, I did my best. That's what it was. You see.
I see.
So yeah, so it's not coming from this sense of doom and danger and sense of there is a personal vulnerability. It does not come from that space. It comes from a place of peace, trust. It recognizes its eternity. It recognizes its immortality, and it recognizes its globality. It recognizes that there is no person, that this other, this other person that made a action, a certain choice, they did not choose their thoughts. They did not choose their thoughts.
So there's no lack of compassion.
Absolutely, there's no lack of compassion. And there
I
is
see.
and there is no guilt, because you do not choose your thoughts. You do not live in the past. At the moment, a thought that came to you was, this person is going to aggress me, I better do something about them, and you did something, and it turned out that they were just coming to ask you a question. The thought that was downloaded to you, maybe it was the way they moved,
So sorry, let me get an ice pack for your nose.
Yeah.
This is just beautiful. So the consciousness, what I'm getting from this basically is, don't just set consciousness, the true nature, aside, and now I'm going to dig into this situation as a person. You don't do that. You don't need to make the switch, which would in effect be freedom from vas and.
Yeah, there is no person. That's the darkness and the confusion. Whenever you identify as a person, you're feeling there is confusion, because the mind has structures in it. The me structures come in, and they obscure the clarity. It's like the veil. The me is like a veil. It's a personal veil that clouds your vision. So no, you don't park consciousness aside and you approach anything as a person. It's the opposite, exactly the opposite. You actually observe everything. You approach everything as consciousness, meaning as presence, as borderless presence, as universal presence. The presence that speaks these words is the presence that hears these words. It's the same presence that speaks them and hears them. It's a universal presence. So you go to the reality of your experience is that you are this presence. And there are thoughts that travel through this presence that say, oh, I am Ananda, I am Magdi, I am this, I am a man, I am growing old, I am aging, I am this. These are perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and sensory perceptions, and they disappear in deep sleep. They all dissolve. Even not in deep sleep, even the waking state, they dissolve. Ideas that you had about yourself at 2 o'clock this afternoon are, where are they? They dissolve. You see, but the
Yeah.
open presence that hears these words, that has not dissolved. You see, the images in the mirror might dissolve, but the mirror does not dissolve.
Mm.
The the waves on the ocean might dissolve, but the ocean does not dissolve. So it's important that you recognize yourself, and you live as that recognition. You live as what you have recognized. And you explore that. There isn't like a formula. You explore that, which is really beautiful because consciousness loves exploration. It's like, we play hide and seek when we are little children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We love to look and forage and look under the bed, and we love to, yeah, we do. Find something, we look in the newspaper to find what is the next play and whatever, we go into a crowd, we look at all the people, we're interested, we look at their faces, how they move, and, we enjoy that. We enjoy that. But this enjoyment doesn't come from any identification. It's just our innocence that loves to explore, that loves to discover. There is a joy in that, you see, but it's not trying to accomplish anything or go anywhere
Mm-hmm.
or prove anything or save anything or safeguard anything. It's not trying to do that.
Mm. Mm.
So it's really important that you experiment and you live in your understanding in the waking dream.
Mm.
It's very important because that's how you can conduct your own experiments in the waking dream that stabilize yourself as consciousness under various circumstances.
Mm-hmm. So it just occurring to me, so needs tend to get met on the relative level, but I have no needs.
Yes,
They
beautiful.
tend to get
Yes,
met,
yes.
and they'll probably get met
So
just
that.
as well
Yes,
without
yes.
manipulating.
Yes, right. That's well said. Yes, I, as consciousness, have no needs, but the needs at the body-mind level get met. They get met more readily and more sweetly and more happily when you recognize that you have no needs. And they get met with more complications and more conflict and more disappointment and less completely when you imagine that you do have needs.
Yeah.
So when you are identified, then your desires get unhappy fulfillments. When you're not identified, your desires are fulfilled in very happy ways.
Ah, beautiful. Muchas gracias.
De nada. Okay, well, thank you very much for your lovely company. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay,
Thank you, Magdi.
okay. See you. Goodbye. Okay, Isaac.
Bye.